these guys have in common? Anything you can guess? Wonder. They all smoke weed or marijuana. I know they're all people too, but yeah, they all did that. Alright, so my argument today is why we should legalize marijuana in the United States. And pretty much throughout most of our lives we've been brought to think that marijuana is just this bad drug. I know at least I was a victim to it, I always thought it was really bad. But I just think that was just through propaganda and fear throughout America's history. And today's my argument, I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about the history of marijuana in the United States. I'm going to talk about why it was made illegal in the United States. And finally, why it should be legalized in the United States. So let's talk about the history of marijuana in the United States. So marijuana comes around in the American scene around 1611. It was brought over by Jamestown settlers. And by 1762, actually, Virginia started punishing people for not growing marijuana just because it has so many practices in American society, such as medicine or actually we use this paper, apparently. This one guy, George Washington, he was kind of important. He actually grew hemp on his Mount Vernon farm for 30 years. Fun fact. Thomas Jefferson, this other really cool dude, he also grew marijuana. And they both were in their diaries, just note that they grew for medicinal purposes, not to just have fun. Then by 1850, marijuana is added to the U.S. pharmacopoeia, which pretty much means it can be used as a medicine. So it gives legitimacy to the drug. Continued history, between 1910 and 1920 or the Prohibition era, when they were like, alcohol's bad, drugs are bad, anything is bad. The states began to outlaw marijuana, and as you can read that quote, I'm not going to read it, you can read it. It pretty much says that they outlawed marijuana because they just didn't like it. They had no scientific backing, they just didn't want people using it. And hope you go over that. So by 1915, President Wilson signed the Harrison Act, which pretty much put a regulation on drugs. It wasn't necessarily marijuana per se, a lot of it had to do with opium, but the importance of this is that it set the base for drug regulation in the United States at a federal level. And by the 1930s, the American pharmaceutical firms began selling marijuana for medical purposes because they can make a profit from it. And some of these companies were Parkin-Davis, Eli Lilly, and Grimaldi Company actually sold marijuana in the form of cigarettes, claiming that it was a cure for asthma, and I just think that's kind of ironic and funny. Let's see. By 1930, this little gem here, Harry Anslinger, which I pronounce wrong every time, he's promoted to the head of the Narcotics Bureau. It's a little note on the side, he was also part of the Prohibition Commission, so he really doesn't like marijuana at all. He's just against it. And by 1933, the government just realized that marijuana, they just don't like it. They have no scientific backing for why it could be bad for you. They just don't like it. They don't like people using it. And they started scaring people away from using it through the uses of yellow journalism. If for those of you who don't know what yellow journalism is, it's just exaggerated journalism. It's just not true. And one of the biggest uses of yellow journalism was this little dude, William Randolph Hearst. He owned a newspaper company, and he would just tell these ridiculous stories of axe-wielding murderers and marijuana killing people, because that happens all the time apparently. And 1936, this little film is made, Reefer Madness, and it's just about this high school couple who starts using marijuana due to the pressures of it, and they start going crazy and doing all these ridiculous things because that happens all the time. And by 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act comes around, and that just puts a tax on anyone who uses or sells or grows marijuana, thus making it like, it'll just shy people away from using the drug. And the first guy arrested on marijuana charges is Samuel Caldwell, and he was arrested, put in jail for 4 years, and then he died the day after he was released from jail. And I just have this picture of Step Brothers, because I think he looks a lot like the father from Step Brothers. You guys see that? I just thought that was funny. More history, I know it's a lot. By 1942, marijuana is removed from the U.S. pharmacopoeia, which pretty much means that it's not, they can't use it for medicine anymore. They don't see any usages for it in medicine. Again, this really isn't based on any scientific backing. It's just they just don't want people using it. And by 1970, the Controlled Substance Act described marijuana as no longer acceptable as medical use. And then by 71, President Nixon declared the United States war on drugs, naming drug abuse as public enemy #1. Once again, none of this is based off scientific backing. So why did they really want people not using marijuana? There are several reasons. Racism, fear, Harry Anslinger, who I mentioned earlier, yellow journalism, mentioned earlier, William Randolph Hearst, and breeder competition. So these guys. Pretty much, Harry Anslinger, like I said, was head of the Narcotics Bureau, and he was also part of the Prohibition Commission, and his primary goal was to make marijuana illegal by any means possible. He just didn't want people using it. A lot of his arguments were based off of William Randolph Hearst's newspaper entries. None of it, like I said, none of it based off of scientific research at all whatsoever. And William Randolph Hearst's research entries, journals, whatever you want to call it, articles, they were just these fictitious stories, like I said, of axe-wielding murderers going around killing people because they were high on marijuana. And it's just funny, because most people think that the argument for marijuana was just this really philosophical, complex debate, you know, between God and man, but really it was just Harry Anslinger just, literally had a binder full of news articles showing people like the bad sense of marijuana that wasn't based on any scientific research. Okay. Also to go on the scene with racism. So jazz musicians during like the Harlem scene in America, a lot of their music was inspired when they were smoking marijuana, such as famous songs by Cab Calloway's "The Funny Reefer Man," and a quote in one of William Randolph Hearst's news articles goes, "Marijuana influences Negroes to look at white people in the eye, step on the white man's shoes, and look at the white woman twice." So there's some heavy racism going on there. And through fear, there were rumors of Mexicans, blacks, and foreigners who were snaring white children with marijuana. Because that obviously sounds super logical. And a lot of people believe that William Hearst Randolph didn't like Mexicans because he lost like 800,000 acres to this Pancho Villa, which is a bunch of Mexicans. So they were just like, this guy doesn't like Mexicans. He doesn't want them smoking marijuana. So he's pretty much releasing all these stories, these fictitious stories of people doing crazy, ridiculous things while smoking marijuana. So, why should marijuana be made legal today? There are two main reasons why. I think there's some reasons. There are health benefits and there are economic benefits. To go into the health benefits, marijuana is known through studies to treat migraines, it can slow tumor growth, it can prevent Alzheimer's, it can treat glaucoma, and it can prevent seizures. I could go into detail about that, but I really wouldn't know how to explain it because I'm not a health whiz. The economic benefits, it can reduce state and federal deficits, it can allow government to collect tax from sales, and Cato Institute did a study a few years back before they started legalizing marijuana. They concluded that $8.7 billion in savings would be made if marijuana were legalized. To go into more benefits, and these are all estimations, none of this is actually due from now present time, but it's estimated that $13 billion would be saved on prohibition enforcement, and this is just if cops don't have to go around looking for it, they can be saving money. It's estimated that $500 million in revenue would be saved in the state of Washington once they legalize marijuana. $60 million could be saved in Colorado once they legalize marijuana. Also, if you legalize marijuana, it wouldn't have to be so expensive, and thus people who are buying it aren't having to spend as much money on it. Thus, the money that they aren't spending, they can put back into the economy, which would be good for the economy. Also, to kind of go with the prohibition enforcement, it's estimated that it costs $1 billion per year to keep prisoners who were incarcerated based on drug charges, including marijuana, in prison. So, if we're releasing them, we're saving $1 billion per year, which is kind of a lot of money for me. It's a little chunk of our $16 trillion of debt, but hey. Marijuana tax prohibition costs taxpayers $41.8 billion per year. So, if we legalize marijuana, we're saving $41.8 billion per year. Also, in terms of job creation, which is kind of a big deal, this company WeGrow, and they just grow marijuana for medical use. For every center that they create, they also create 75 jobs. So, more jobs equals good economy, yay. So, let's see, that's it. In conclusion, hope you guys enjoyed a little spiel on marijuana. I know I sure did. I don't smoke marijuana, I never have, I don't intend to. I always thought it was bad, but now I just think, hey, it could be good for the economy. Marijuana was made illegal, in my opinion, through the usage of fear and propaganda. And I just think through simple logic and economic understanding, you could hopefully legalize marijuana fully in the United States. You could save a ton of money. And that's all I got.